Oh gosh. I don't know. I may change the thumbnail later. We'll see. I don't know. Anyway, hi. Welcome back to It Is When It Is Tarot, where apparently it is more frequent than it was. Excuse me. So, how do I give this a context? I'm doing something today that I'm honestly kind of sort of surprised it's taken me this long to do, but also kind of sort of at the same time, not really. I have found context in one second. One second. What? Sorry. Hey, how you doing? Wow. That's yeah, it's whatever. That's neither here nor there. We're gonna get into this. So I've mixed up the SKT. I have mixed and combined the Revelations and Vitruvian editions. I have the cards that I'm not using from each set off to the side. The deck is primarily the Vitruvian edition. So it's like we're going back to the Vitruvian. The Vitruvian and Revelations mean different things to me. And it's interesting the movement from one deck to the other. But I have replaced certain cards, like even though I'm using the Vitruvian edition of the SKT, I have the Revelations Hierophant rather than the Vitruvian Holy See. I have, or should have, I don't think I grabbed it. I'm using the Revelations Haunt rather than the Vitruvian Haunt, and also the Revelations Pugilist versus the Vitruvian burdened one. No, I have both the Revelations and it's the Nine of Wands. I have the Nine of Wands from both decks. I'm using the Nine of Swords from the Revelations edition, the Hierophant from the Revelations edition, and like other cards. Um, what I'm going to do today, though, is so I've combined the two decks. I am going to shuffle them and pull. It doesn't matter if I start from the top or the bottom. To me, it doesn't matter because I don't know where these cards are, but it very much so matters. Yeah, I did put it in there. It very much so matters because of however many cards I am going to discount. So everything, I think that is how I'm going to do it. I'm looking for the Fools, the Initiate, the Seeker, and the Keeper. I've had my own revelations and realizations in these past few months, but mostly in this past month. Kind of sort of since I got back. Yeah, I've been doing that a lot. Well, basically every day. I've been walking every day for a while now. And when I came home, like it was important to me that I keep doing it. So yeah, I had just started my walk and I got on YouTube. Excuse me, because I like to listen to YouTube while I'm getting where I'm going, and then once I'm there, I listen to an audiobook, He Who Fights with Monsters, and then I listen to YouTube on the way back. And so I logged in, and like Reem was at the top, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Because I was literally just thinking about her. Um, I don't think I've ever necessarily talked about it specifically, but I've mentioned it. Um, Reem is like one of my mystic buddies, and I don't have a lot of mystic buddies. I think Reem might be like the mystic buddy for me. And then there's another friend that I have who is mystic adjacent who is also a Sagittarius. And then my other friend, okay, yeah. So my Sagittarius friends, especially my Sagittarius female friends, are like, I'm like now realizing like my mystic buddies. Wow. And my relationship with all of them are, there is some overlap between them, but I would say they're largely unique. Um, but Reem came into my life where I was exploring more of that. So with my other two mystic Sagittarian buddies, um, it's like one was more so on the front end. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I was thinking about everything that's been coming through lately. It's sort of like just cycling up here. And I was like, I should really look into it or feel into this rather than just like continuing to move on. Well, I was thinking to myself, I was like, I should like really dig into this. And I feel like it would help me process some of it if I had someone to like talk it out with. And then I was like, oh, Reem. Reem is my mystic buddy. Reem is the person that I, when I'm not obsessed with being a muggle. Reem is the person. Also, I have a few other, I don't know. Anyway. Last time I talked to Rob, he was doing pretty well. He should actually be gearing up to go on a trip here pretty soon. But yeah, uh, it's been maybe a few weeks since I talked to Rob. But yeah, as far as I know, he's doing well. He's shifting his own like pace, and yeah. Oh, oh wow, we saw those two cards last time, Dynasty and Apocalypse, because it featured the completed Kabbalah Tree of Life on both. Yeah. Anyway, I was like, I should like dig into some of this, and I was like, oh, Reem, and then like I opened up YouTube and she was live. I was like, oh my gosh, look at that. I don't know. I go through these phases of like being more and less active on here, being more and less engaged in my physical life versus spiritual life. You could say phases where I'm like more focused on like working a 9 to 5, getting a 9 to 5, and then phases where it's more like, well, what's going on in the energy of the collective or whatever, or like what's going on with me. And I feel like I'm almost sort of hitting this place where, oh, Matthew was there. I missed him. I didn't even really like, I didn't take my glasses with me when I went on the walk. So I was like squinting at the screen. I couldn't read like anything, but I was just like typing. And then I was listening on the walk because I was, trying to be attentive to my surroundings so as to not get hit by a car. Anyway, um, yeah, so it's been like I've been having these realizations and how I'm like, go live, pull cards, talk about it. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna in the SKT, I don't know if I'm gonna go from the top or the bottom. I think I want to go from the bottom because it'll be quicker. But I might actually pull from the top. I guess I will pull from the top. I'm gonna shuffle up the deck. They're like kind of sort of mixed. Also, like you can kind of tell the difference. You can see one that's almost like more yellowy gold, the other one that's more like silvery blue. Um, they're not necessarily mixed extremely well, but also at the same time, we are definitely operating under that. They are as they need to be, and we will see what we need to see. The Golden Shield, Power and Authority of Fire, just fell out with the Stronghold of the Zephyrs, Herald of the Consummating. Bottom of the deck is the Tension. The Two of Orbs is another card. I think I have the Two of Orbs in both decks. But anyway, I'm going to look for one of the Fools, the Initiate, the Seeker, and the Keeper. And however, whichever Fool comes out is the one that I'm going to abide by. So if the Initiate comes out, which is the Fresh Fool, then we're going to like more surface level. If the Keeper comes out, then we're more so to like my level of curiosity or sort of like how I've been processing it. Some of it, obviously, for me, how I'm specifically processing it, obviously for me. And then the keeper, the seeker. I keep doing that, confusing the seeker for the keeper. The seeker is somewhere in between. Um, yeah. So every card that comes out before the significator, I also have the fools from both decks in here. Usually, sometimes, more often than not, the Revelations edition is more like now, and the Vitruvian edition is more like in the past or before. But today, the Vitruvian edition is more sort of the soul, and the Revelations edition is more of the consciousness. But consciousness being almost, it's not necessarily that distinction. It's like it is, but it isn't. Consciousness being what we're consciously aware of, soul being, the soul. What we're not necessarily consciously aware of, but also what we are consciously aware of. Because especially after the last one, I could see how like different things spread out over the past 6 years. 5 years, 5 to 6. I mean, it was the end of 2019, but I would say the beginning of 2020, really. Well, yeah, I would say mostly the beginning of 2020, but technically I did start pulling at the end of 2019. Most of those are probably like privated or deleted. Anyway, it was a different era. It was a different time. um, but after like sort of like thinking about it and processing it, I'm like, oh, and it's like, yeah. Um, Again, I didn't necessarily want to give like too much preamble, but because depending on which fool comes out, there are certain things that I may not even talk about anyway. But yeah, today it's every video is a take it as it resonates, and if it doesn't resonate, then leave it behind. But today, especially if you do find resonance, apply even more discernment because it sort of came out towards the end of the last video where we'll get into it. Maybe it's fine. But yeah, if it resonates, I would almost use a little bit more discernment than if it doesn't. Oof. The Scarlet Shield, Sanctum of the Valiant, just came out. When I was going through the decks to pull the cards that I wanted to pull to combine and then set the other ones aside, I noticed the ziggurats in the back of the Sanctum of the Valiant, and it reminded me of Topless Pyramids from the Ether Drift booster pack. In the Realm of Fire, in that portal, and on the other side, the Thopter, we saw the pyramids with the floating tops. And it's like, oh, that's like these ziggurats are like the base of the pyramids with the floating tops. And now she's back out with two cards face down, also from the Revelations edition, the Archangel of Mysteries and the Conservator, Angel who illuminates the shadow, and the Four of Orbs. I guess there's been this theme of like worthiness kind of for a while. The Reaper passage to initiation is at the bottom of the deck, and we've been seeing the Reaper passage to initiation quite a fair amount too. Um, but yeah, I would apply even more discernment if it resonates because this is general and because it's largely because it's general, and even if it were personal there would still be a boundary barrier and limitation because what is of the soul is sacred, and it's not necessarily always open to be read or discussed. Sometimes it's important for us to have certain realizations, and again, like the end of yesterday, I respect the high priestess. I respect the things that are not mine to know, are not mine to disclose. I respect the process, I respect the journey, and I respect other people's processes and journeys. Um, and sometimes, if we get a little bit of information too early, we go, we base things off of our understanding at that time, right? And in that case, when we try to shortcut a process or when we're almost like rushed through a journey because we're given certain conclusions that naturally we should arrive at. Um, oh, wow. Well, I'm glad to hear it. We actually had Penn Station today. So it's interesting you mentioned Philadelphia. Because I was like, I read like East Coast subs, and I was like, oh, like Philadelphia is on the East Coast, isn't it? And so now you mentioned Philadelphia. That's funny. Also, synchronicities lately have been. Anyway, I feel like that's another thing where it's like, okay, like maybe I should like muggle a little bit less or integrate. I think one thing that I've found completely unexpectedly is you could say a balance that I favor. There's something about being too like mystical or spiritual that for me kind of like puts me off because I'm like, I'm a human here to have a human experience. I want to live my 9 to 5 fantasy. My midheaven is in Capricorn, okay, and I'm a Taurus moon. Let me have my let me have my fantasy. But here recently, it's like, okay, like I don't know. Also, things have been like catching my attention in interesting ways. Anyway, it's fine. That is what we're going to do today. Ooh, the Reaper is with the tower. Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to pull off the top. And I am going to, if we get the Keeper, I will pull, I don't know how we're going to do this. I really don't know how we're going to do this. If we get the Keeper of one edition, I want it to. I keep saying the Keeper. If we get the Seeker of one edition, I want it to pull before and after the Keeper in the same edition, and then before and after the Initiate in the other edition. If we get the Initiate, it ends at the Initiate. If we get the Keeper, then it would be the Seeker and the Initiate from the other edition. I also brought out I have the other two decks, the remaining cards face down on the table, because if I get a card that is not part of the combined decks, I can look before and after in the other one for context. I don't necessarily, I would say I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, but I got an inkling to leave the cards out just in case. So it may very well happen. And yeah, there are 6 significators in the deck: the Initiate, Seeker, and Keeper from both decks. Hopefully, it's not the bottom 6 cards, and I don't discard all of them. But yeah, I feel like I didn't finish that thought from earlier. This is why I love like writing instead of just like speaking. Because I'm like, did I finish that thought from earlier or did I think it? I remember sometimes there would be times where like I would watch myself like watch videos back and there would be this line of thinking that like I would get again while I was watching it back. And then I'm like, oh, this is the part where I talk about this. And that was interesting. So I'm interested to see like how I'm gonna interact with it now that I'm watching it. And then I realized I never said anything. I was like, oh, so like all of that was just like a thought the whole time. Which is fine. We get what we need, right? Sometimes more than we need, sometimes a little bit less, but we make do with what we have. And I think that's it. All right, I'm gonna give this a few more shuffles. And I still didn't complete the thought. So the reason why I said apply more discernment if it resonates is because this is going to be general, right? So even if I come up with a metaphor or a scenario, if I come up with a way to illustrate a point, even if some of the details may be like resonant for you, I would still apply a discernment because what you've gained in your journey and in your process will give specific insights to you. And for you, you may be able to see a connection between these different stages and events that would lead to an insight that I may not have because it's not my revelation to have on your behalf, right? Cool. I feel like this is shuffled. I kind of want to give it a cut, so I'll cut it. Why not? We're going to do a 3 cut and we're going to put it back like that. And like I said, we're going to pull from the top of the deck. So we are looking for an initiate, a seeker, or a keeper. And I always look at the top 3 cards before I like really go through them. So more often than not, the Eminence is the first card out, which is the 9 of Pentacles. This is the Kabbalah Tree of Life without Malkuth. This is as complete as it gets outside of the New World. No, outside of Apocalypse and Dynasty. The Ten of Pentacles and the World. In both the Ten of Pentacles and the World, the 10th or 10th emanation Malkuth is connected to Yesod. And the World is connected to Yesod, Netzach, and I said Chesed, but Chesed or Chokmah. No, Chokmah and Bina are at the top. Chesed it was at the other side of Gavora. I don't remember. Had. How could I forget Had? It's Had and Netzach. Or again, I probably butchered it. How did I forget Had? Or Hode, or however you pronounce it. In the World, there's a connection between Malkuth and all 3 of the bottom ones. In the Ten of Pentacles, there's only a connection between Yesod and Malkuth. This is basically as complete as one can get before everything is just like, oh well. The snail is here, meaning it took maybe a while. But there's also a feeling of like not betraying that patience, right? It's like if someone has been meticulous or if someone has gone through the entire duration of a process up to a certain point, especially the closer you get to the finish line, it's almost like, why would you betray that effort by being like sloppy or by rushing unnecessarily? Right. Sometimes, again, take it as it resonates. Sometimes we pick up at the end because our lesson is different. Anyway, The next card is the Golden Shield, Power and Authority of Fire. And then the third card is the Keeper. Cool. All right. So I'm loving it. We get the whole deck to work with. This also means that we're going to look before and after both the Initiate and the Seeker in the Vitruvian edition. In the Revelations edition, sorry. I'm going to reveal this card too. It's the Blind Seer, the Two of Swords. I kind of love that the Blind Seer is here. The Blind Seer is the Two of Swords is my minor High Priestess, because the Two of Swords is a card where we can't necessarily differentiate one thing as being better or worse than the other. It's kind of an impasse, but it's an impasse because seemingly the playing fields are so level. There are pros and cons to both sides, and neither one outweighs the other. It can almost be a problem for which there is no natural or apparent solution. But it's where our intuition can come in and be that like tiebreaker, or it can be that deciding factor. The thing that we wouldn't necessarily be able to account for. Interesting. Well, now that I'm looking for the other two, we're looking at the bottom of the deck, and I almost pulled the also because the Keeper is here, like we're going like full everything that I've like realized. So do I talk about it now or after? Also because the Keeper is here again. Use your own discernment, especially if it resonates. And if it doesn't resonate, then like just discard the whole thing. I don't know. Because again, like yesterday or the day before, I think it was the last time I was live. I was like, sometimes there's a tendency for us to like, if 60 to 80%, 60 plus, 60 to 75 plus percent of something resonates as true, we can have a tendency to take the whole thing as fact or true. Which is why it's like the discernment will differentiate, hopefully, for us what is true and what may be different in our own circumstance, right? To get a more complete story, to get our story. And maybe it's personal experience that motivates that. I've found a lot of things that resonate as partially true. I don't know if I've never necessarily had anything that resonated as completely true, like 100% of it, but the things that it's like there were things that led me to other things, right? And so it was true enough, if that makes sense. Like what didn't personally resonate as true, like let's say that a symbol popped out or something like that, and the symbol was interpreted by the person in one way, especially if it's general, but even for like personal things, um because I am an open book, but also not every page can be read or interpreted, you know what I mean? Anyway, there may be a symbol that the other person interpreted in one way. The interpretation of the symbol may not resonate for me, but the symbol itself resonates for me in a way. Right. And it's like, oh, cool. Wow. Has it been? Anyway. So the thing that I realized yesterday was the story of the, especially in the SKT, especially the Vitruvian edition, because the Revelations edition is the most recent one, and pretty much all of these insights were gleaned or whatever word you'd use from the Vitruvian edition. First was the Archangel of Mysteries, the angel who illuminates shadow. Almost more just like an initiation, right? Or like something is open. The Archangel of Healing and the Archangel Commander came out roughly at the same time. I think the Archangel of Healing actually may have had an edge. And it was the spiritual dissolution. The It was like the spiritual deprivation, spiritual sensory deprivation tank thing. And that is the key thing that I didn't realize until after the live yesterday, after the last live, which may have been yesterday. Actually, I think it was the 29th. I don't remember typing 5:30. Anyway, because, excuse me, it was the whole thing of integration. And there was something that felt a little trickstery in it. And the tricksteriness wasn't necessarily indicative of the energy itself. It was more so of a human interpretation of it, especially at a revelation that had been given before we had worked to the point to almost reach that conclusion on our own. And it was specifically in the whole, like, let's say that someone chooses to integrate their humanity and divinity rather than discarding most of their humanity to embody whatever is divine. If that person hadn't done like a full self review, it was the thing with the owl on Sariel, Angel of the Waning Moon, and those pieces of the self that were discarded and maybe, I want to say, like annihilated but not destroyed, made peace wise or piecemeal, made piecemeal like Osiris by Set, that would need to be reassembled and reanimated by the power of Isis for it to come back online. And it was like, if we had gone through our journey, we would know what is us and what is not us, so that we'd better be able to bring forward what is truly like our characteristic and what is of our soul, and we would be able to let go, or at least put up for, I want to say like put up for sacrifice, the things that have been like put upon us. And so that when we integrate with divinity and our nature becomes more divine, it is truly like a union between our soul and the divine, because we ourselves know what it is of us, rather than if we just watch a reading, this is what the reading says, it resonates as true for us, and we go through this process where, with our knowledge of ourself or wherever we are at our journey, these are the things that I'm going to discard, and these are the things that I'm going to take in or take on or try. These are the things that I'm going to try to embody. But if we discard the things that are truly us, then there is some like warped, twisted, I want to say like dark union almost, but it wouldn't even be a dark union, maybe shadow union, um, between what is divine and what is us. But there could be like key parts of us that we've discarded, or there could be other things that we think are us or that we're carrying with us that's not us, right? But because we hear this and it resonates for us, this is where we are, and blah blah blah, whatever. So I was thinking about that. Well, not necessarily thinking about it, but after the live, I remembered the Archangel of Healing and her spiritual sensory deprivation tank, where it's like the ego dissolves and the whole self dissolves, and it's floating in this tank, and we see our light, we see our darkness, and we see the shadows in between. We see the shadows that are darkness projected onto us. We see the light that is shadow projected onto us. Like, oh, you're really good at this and you're really good at that. And like, yeah, they could be things that you're good at, but also it could be things that, I don't know, people who gaslit you for some time, like inflated you on or whatever. And so mostly like in a positive sense and connotation rather than a negative one, but it's still not necessarily something that's true to you. And that came out so long ago, I forgot. I am pretty sure It wasn't that much time in between the Archangel of Healing and the Archangel Commander, but I'm pretty sure the Archangel of Healing came out first. With that, knowing what is truly us, light and dark, and what is not us, and integrating, or first it was knowing, but also integrating what is us and standing to release what is not. And then it was the Archangel Commander that had us find a sword and then taught us to use it. And it's all of those things together that get us to the Archangel of Glory. Now, I actually, maybe 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, it was when I was at my old place, I'm pretty sure. Actually, it may not have been. I did a reading where there was a series of the archangels. The order that they appeared on here to me to read publicly was first the Archangel of Mysteries and then the Archangel of Healing, the Archangel Commander. So the only one left would be the Archangel of Glory. But I was like, well, what if the archangels sort of appear in a different order for someone else? And then I read one of them. I was going to do more. I think I only did one. I may have done two in that video, but regardless, I had forgotten about the Archangel of Healing, who her trial was the process of us discovering what is truly us. And that's the thing that like clinched the whole everything. So that when we go through whatever process, we don't discard something that is us. Right. And so that's why it was like a little trickstery. Because of, and I guess that's a thing lately. That whole sentiment of like, it's not the nature of power to corrupt, it's the nature of man to be corrupted by power. There is something's effect on the human mind, body, spirit, soul, psyche because we are human, and then there is what something truly is, right? And so if we don't reach certain conclusions ourselves, again, it's just easier to not, it's easier to abandon something that we at some point will probably realize we should have kept. So I guess I shouldn't be too surprised that the Nine of Pentacles is here, because there is a completeness to this imminence Nine of Pentacles. Everything is there besides Malkuth. It's like we've done everything we humanly can. Again, with the readings that have been coming out lately, I feel like even when I leave room to not necessarily take it as far or whatever, we still end up going there anyway. All the cards are of confirmation. And again, we start with the Keeper. It's interesting, though, that we start with this Keeper, but not surprising because of how many times we saw Tails last time. The three staves with the ribbon of completion. The apprentice, the adept had already completed their apprenticeship when we were looking at the journeyman. I feel like this puts us. Oh, yeah. Anyway, so that's all that. Now back to this. I almost kept the Typhon, I think. Or is Typhon? No, Battling the Typhon is the title. I think it may be the demon in both of them. I almost used the one from the Revelations edition rather than this one in the Vitruvian edition. And it's interesting that the Ace of Chalices, holy water, is. I mean, I guess between the demon and holy water, typically holy water wins, right? And it's the purifying. Okay. There's a reason why I included this one, and I am now discovering it. In the Revelations edition, there is an Ace of Chalices sized hole in the demon's chest where its heart should be. This, which makes us susceptible, especially more susceptible to a lot of the tricks of devil energy and stuff like that. If it were that one and the Ace of Chalices would slot into that and would purify that devil energy from the inside out. This one doesn't have that Ace of Chalices size hole, but instead it has that, I don't know, 10 out of 9 of the Esoterica in the Vitruvian edition. And apparently the first edition was even more. Meaning, I don't know what all this is, but she's giving like a lock between maybe the root and the. Actually, take it as it resonates and use your own discernment. We did see with the 77 um, of the challenge of the 7 of coins, the deck dungeon challenge. There were the councils, the 7 councils that sat at the root at the 7 chakras, at 7 of the chakras. The root, the council of the root, council of the sacral, council of the solar plexus, and so on and so forth. So wherever this blockage is, wherever the challenge is, wherever what is sealed, it could be in any one of the myriad chakras. It could be in multiple. Here, it's almost like it's in the sacral and it extends to the root and the solar plexus. But what's interesting here, also we see the south node. South node is currently in Virgo. We also see this crescent moon that we saw in so many of the angels up there. It feels like this devil energy is bound by the phoenix and the dragon rather than the phoenix and the dragon being bound by devil energy. Because the keeper is here, the discerning one is under that. And this is we saw it in the other edition. So obviously, see, but I love that because the Ace of Chalices is the purifying, to be discerning in what needs purification, which is literally was the whole point of the spiritual sensory deprivation tank of the Archangel of Healing. To know what is us and what is not us. Literally the whole shadow union thing of we discard things that are us because of whatever, and we attempt to integrate a distorted self with the divine, or we attempt an embodiment with an incomplete vessel because we have discarded whatever, because we've come across whatever information. And you could say it's a part of the journey, because eventually we learn and we reclaim whatever pieces and parts. It's to be discerning in what needs integration. Also, it almost mirrors back to the one that was behind the dark and the light, masculine and feminine, right? When in the wild unknown archetypes, and maybe in another one of the wild unknown decks, in the cave and the destroyer, we saw a pair of eyes behind something. But then when the one came out, there was no face behind it. This is interesting. But also, the queen that came out is the Queen of Wands. We've also seen her lately. It was last year, roughly July, where it was it was it Uranus conjuncting Mars and Taurus? because I pulled cards on Uranus conjuncting Mars and Taurus. And if my memory serves, which it may not, the Queen of Wands came out preceding the Empress. And she's also been coming out more recently, too. Yeah, Uranus conjuncting Mars and Taurus. Mars conjuncting Uranus, I guess you could say, because Mars is the faster of the two. So, Uranus was still there, Mars went on. Um, but even recently, she came out. And I posted the community posts with the cat in the mirror. It was like the Queen of Wands, the cat in the mirror, and then the Black Lion. It was with that Keeper of Karnak energy. Um, and again, it goes back to the yin yang. The Queen of Wands is the one that she is a force of light because she is the sun for the sunflowers, but her shadow, her darkness is also present with the black cat that is prominently displayed. It's not anything that she hides. And her having that black cat doesn't make her any less capable of being the light for those sunflowers. So, of course, if there is this whole acceptance of the self, oh, yes, cool. Um, that's this Two of Swords here. The figure holds the sword of the ego and the sword of the spirit, or the sword of the flesh and the sword of the spirit, and then the eye of God shines brightly overhead. They come into their divinity holding both of those things. But again, for me, it's more than semantics to me. But I mean, semantics maybe by definition, but not by colloquial use. Again, going back to the whole, like, there is a difference between dark and shadow. Wow. Discerning what needs to be purified. The thing to be purified in this devil energy is that the chains need to be broken and that set free. But it also takes a certain person to not that the person, I guess you could say it takes a person of a certain level of maturity to have that freed and not just like run rampant. And then again, we see readings, we feel resonance, we go off and basically act recklessly. We dissolve those chains, or we free whatever before we have the maturity and the whatever to like reel it in, not reel it in. Whatever that relationship is undefined. And so it's just like asking for trouble. Which again, if there's resonance in this, especially apply an even healthier dose of discernment. It's almost like you don't free it while it's hostile, but freeing it is also an act of like a show of trust or whatever. Interesting. I feel like I know it. I feel like that eminence of the Nine of Pentacles just like shining. Because there are three orbs on the left side and right side, and also three orbs in the middle. Right. So you could say three on the left hand path, the right hand path, and three on the middle path. Almost like someone who has taken all paths. And there's a difference. There is an illustrated difference between solely taking the middle path and taking all paths while those paths converge on the middle. I need to do some math real quick. 1 second. That math didn't work. The math did not math the way I thought it would math, but it's fine. I was like, is there a mathematical? No. It's fine. What's interesting is also when I was putting the decks together, I looked at specifically, I looked at this significator out of all 6 of them because I saw it when I was shuffling. My original intention, I originally intended to have the initiate, the seeker, and the keeper of both decks. And then when I thought of the keeper, I was like, oh, I should probably just use the keeper from the Vitruvian edition because of the message that she came out with when we saw her recently. But when I was shuffling the cards, I saw this one. And I was like, well, what's the difference between this keeper and the other one? Like, we see her standing in what may be a mirror, standing in front of a mirror, or we see her through a window, through some sort of aperture, or we see her on the other side of an archway. The archway, the window, like having a pane of glass or whatever, an archway just being open. The mirror being her sort of looking at herself. And I had this question when I looked at it, and I was like, what's the difference? I don't know. Also, I have these laid out 3 by 3 so far. We have the 3 doves here, 2 on the sides with the pillar, 1 in the middle. Under it is holy water with the dove approaching the chalice. I had also decided that I didn't necessarily decide, I never had the thought until I was looking through the Revelations edition cards, and I also saw holy water in the Revelations edition. Oh, I can pull before and after holy water in the Revelations edition. That's why I left those cards on the table. Because the thought was the narrative is of patrons and benefactors. And it is with the endorsement of a patron or benefactor that we come into more. Right? That's the narrative so far. In the most recent video, when we saw Armoros, the Angel of Undoing, who holds the real Karukian mythos of bringing down the veil extended beyond what is external. The veil also affected the internal. So the bulk of the divinity within man had been separated from its human nature, more animalistic nature, through an internal veil that was breaking to allow for that union between what is the self and what is, I don't know what that word, I guess sublime. Sure. It was like an S word that was like, the letter S was floating in my brain. And I was like, what's that word? You could say between what is self and what is sublime. That veil, almost like a pane, was being lifted so these two things could like come together and mix, however. Right. And I saw the Ace of Chalices in the Hallowed Flame, the Burdened One, and the Healer. Love that. Also, the Keeper came out. So When I was looking at Hasmed, the Angel of Annihilation, when Hasmed, the Angel of Annihilation came out, it was about the veil sort of being lifted. And what I loved about the description in the book for Hasmed, Angel of Annihilation, is what is no longer necessary is being unmade by Hasmed, implying that it was necessary for a time and for a point. For it was necessary for a time up until a certain point, but now it is time to be undone. And that's when I was like, oh, there were so like every time I was like flipping coins, like, do I say something or not? It was because again, part of it is me trying to discern and differentiate what is for me and what is for the collective. Another part is, and again, in this whole vein of what information, what perspectives, what comes out of my mouth that may be more harmful until we reach a certain level of mental, emotional, spiritual maturity to understand it in context rather than forcing a context based upon all that we know. Right. And like what is to be discovered. And I feel like, honestly, at least over here, there's not necessarily much to be hidden. But that's also where this like tricky energy comes about. But it's not my job to serve as the discernment for someone else, right? Although, like, I don't want to be that person that does whatever. I'm not. Because at a certain point, I have to trust in uh, all of our ability to discern um, and to go about our journeys, right? So yeah, when the Angel of Annihilation came out and it was like, what is no longer necessary? I was like, oh whoa. Oh yeah, so like the hallowed flame here, Ace of Scepters, the Awakening, and the Burden one, with the healer gifts of the spirit as the bottom three cards. Again, it feels like there are certain barriers, boundaries that are being removed. Now we did see Gavura, the left hand judgment, severity, who separates the worthy from the unworthy. We saw the tower fall on the Three of Cups, which was an energy of some may proceed and some may not. Um, oh, and look, there's Isis in her temple doing her resurrection thing with the joined one, Two of Cups, and the Memory Keeper. Cool. Okay. We're looking before and after the Ace of Chalices. Because I am pretty. Oh, yeah, we just saw the Hallowed Flame. I was like, I'm pretty sure I left the aces over here. I saw this card too. So here you can see this is the demon in the Revelations edition. And you see the Ace of Chalices size gap in its breastplate. So that's why I was like, oh, like the Ace of Chalices being the foil to devil energy. We don't see it here, but we do see it there. And I was like, oh, but I read it how it felt it was to be read. To be discerning of what needs to be purified. Right. So not. Oh, here we go. Because of course it is. Why would it be anything else? We see the Mason Three of Pentacles, which we saw recently. It was the Three of Pentacles, the Mason, the Three of Wands, the Politic, and the Hierophant, which was Maitreya the Bodhisattva. In this deck in particular, we see it here again. On the other side is the Priestess, Look at the tagline for the priestess: Sanctuary of Isis. As we saw Isis doing her resurrection thing on that pierced heart. Interesting. Also, we saw a warrior priestess yesterday. Cool. I'm gonna shuffle these. I'm gonna shuffle them every time I go looking because that's what it feels like. If you've been here for a while, you know that there is no order beyond that which is intuited or random. But even randomness has meaning to divulge if one has the mind to see it and the eyes to conceive of it. Here is the holy water. And I was looking at the orb or the pearl with that, and even like you see that, like that aura around the dove, that white glow. I don't know if I've ever necessarily noticed it, but it's standing out today. It's like it's removing, like this pearl stoppers the bottom of this, the bottom of the chalice. The Ace of Cups is usually overflowing, right? Now, on this deck, we don't see it overflow, but typically we see it overflowing. With this stopper in it, it's almost like its capacity to release is diminished. Sorry. I was just looking at the cards around it, but I wasn't necessarily looking at it. Right. And specifically because the veil that's drawn, it does more than separate the natural from the supernatural or the physical from the energetic. Apparently, it also affected like souls and served to sort of divide within the self or to polarize, you could say more so to polarize within the self what is base and what is sublime, what is the self and what is sublime. But now that Hasmed, the angel of annihilation, is obliterating the veil, that's extreme. Um, Parts and pieces of the veil are being seen as no longer necessary, so that this union can happen. Union is a loaded term, but use discernment and take it as it resonates. I'm not going to invest too much mental capacity, energy, resources into trying to think of another one. So this is like this stopper, the thing, it's being removed. Right? It's being removed so that now the chalice can fill with these divine waters and begin to overflow more so than if it were still stoppered. Now, this is between Bread of Life and the Demiurge, Ace of Orbs, the Deepening. And we've seen this card a lot. In both editions, maybe, but this is the one with the power to make their own reality. Also, look at the orb being presented to this person who looks oddly similar to our keeper. Another interesting pair, I don't think I showed this one, is the Two of Swords. It's like this. The Two of Swords is on top, the demon's on the bottom. But you see the two swords and then the eye of God in the middle, just like there is the dragon and the phoenix, and then There's the dragon and the phoenix, and then the demon behind them. I was looking to see if this triangle would slot into this, but that's a downward pointing triangle. This is an upward pointing triangle. She's giving like Merkaba though. There's a bigger play in this that's not necessarily a part of the narrative because I have removed certain cards from this deck. But you could say that the remnants of what is truly divine have been demonized by certain hierophants. By arguably a lot of hierophants. And it's almost like even with different hierophants, like different hierophants have restricted different aspects of this, right? So, in a belief that would restrict the ego, then that is the demon that is bound. In beliefs that are different, there's a divinity within the self that can be experienced and exercised, but outside of certain like walls or whatever, it could be considered like demonic or whatever. Like even in the space of like you could say in the space of divination, because there are dreamers, prophets, and prophetesses like in the church or whatever, whose visions are seen as more whatever. But if someone from outside the church is a dreamer, prophet, or prophetess, then like all of a sudden it's like whatever. You could say it's who it comes from, sure, but it's because the demon is holding up this the Hierophant Holy See hand sign, and it's like what is truly divine is locked in chains in favor for what pretends to be. And a lot of us wouldn't have the context or the resources to be able to distinguish the difference because whatever is of the Hierophant is beyond us, right? So it's almost like it's like for kids, it's almost given like elementary magic school tricks, right? Like hiding quarters behind ears, or is it pepper in water? And you put in a drop of soap and it disperses. It's like magnets. It's things that like as you get older and as you mature and as you learn more of the world, you realize that it's like natural forces or it's this or it's that. It's a sleight of hand. It's not actually magic. But when you're young and impressionable, it's like, oh my gosh, type of energy. But you could say one of these chains is divine and the other chain is of the Hierophant because both arms are chained. And the chain of the divine is um, a manifestation of the veil that is internal, right? So to be given this orb, but this is the interesting thing to me though, because here the pearl manifests as like a blockage that is being removed by the dove. But it's here this orb is being presented to the person. I could take that to be how after we liberate this energy from its chains, we have to be the one to hold the reins, right? Just because we don't suppress what is seen as undesirable within us Just because we embrace our ego, just because we embrace our darkness, just because we embrace the shadow doesn't necessarily mean take it as it resonates, because for anybody it can mean whatever else. My general belief would be it doesn't necessarily mean that we let it just have free reign. Also, it feels like there is an element of wisdom that we need to exercise, and whatever this closer approach to divinity uh, gives or brings. So that's this, which I guess I will put. Oh, we go from the two. Oh, that's interesting. It's the golden shield, the discerning one, and the demiurge. The queen of wands, the two of wands, and the four of wands. 2 plus 4 is 6. So you could say the queen of wands and 6 wands. She is victorious. Okay, so now I'm looking before and after. Interesting. Okay. I saw the destroyer and I was like, but I was like, it's not, I'm not going to mention it. And then the initiate was right there. The initiate, spirit in search of experience, is in between the burdened one and the destroyer. This is Saturn in Sagittarius opposing the sun in Gemini. The Ten of Swords and the Ten of Wands. And look, it's our shaman who has completed her training. Again, going off that energy of like something has already been completed. We saw the journeyman finishing. We saw the adept accomplish their apprenticeship. We saw that the adept had accomplished or completed their apprenticeship. We didn't necessarily see the process of it happening. There we go. This is like so difficult for me. And this is also why I wanted to use the Vitruvian edition. There's something about the Vitruvian edition that gets back to the truth of the self, right? There was a truth of the self that through living or circumstance had become muddied and murky. And so we have this revelation, we live this other whatever. We reach all of these realizations and conclusions, but then we take those ultimately back to the self. We saw the burdened one, right? I already shuffled the cards. It was the Ace of Wands, the Ten of Wands, and the Star. Hallowed Flame, the burdened one, and the healer. That burden was being lifted. Now, this is interesting. There's also like so much symbolism. Like, I'm like, where do I start? The shaman in training is proficient in both gold and black shamanism, right? And that was the thing. I don't necessarily have to go over it again. I feel like sometimes my brain is just like overwhelmed. I also think sometimes too, I spend a little too much time trying to show how I arrive at certain conclusions rather than just saying. Um, you could probably hear her. So the two pairs of arms, the extra two pairs of arms, the physical arms of the shaman, the golden arms of the shaman, and the black arms of the shaman. We've already seen this complete acceptance of the self, of the egoic human self, before this internal veil is removed. And I'm fine. If I drink too much more, I'm going to have to go to the bathroom like crazy. I drank a lot of water after my walk. Um, did I? Yeah, and it's already finished. So thanks though. Um, there's already been this thing, right? There was the sword of the self, the sword of the divine, the sword of the light, the sword of the dark, the sword of the self and the sublime, and then there was this eye of God above, right? There is the liberation of what is truly divine within us at a point where a relationship is mature enough to not be detrimental to the self or others. Also, we've seen the in the eye of God and in the devil here, these like circles with the triangles in them. Also, we see one, I didn't show you, but there is one in the Mason here. I mentioned that because of it's almost like the circles overlap behind the destroyer, but the shapes kind of sort of like stack or overlay on top of each other. It's giving overlay, but represented on a two-dimensional flat, relatively card. Also, we see something similar. It feels like it's more complete in the destroyer, but we see the beginnings of it in the demiurge sort of coming together. Also, there is this puzzle block, or I mean, to somebody that knows what this is, I'm sure it's not a puzzle, but there are these interwoven triangles here too in the bread of life, which could be the key to decoding whatever that is and solving the mystery if there's one. That's this, right? We already saw the healer with um oh gosh. We already saw the healer with the burdened one in the Revelations edition. And it was the energy of like that thing being removed so that the hallowed flame can so that the light of that flame is no longer obscured. And then we come into the burden one here again. This is the completion that this was the completion of the apprenticeship that we already saw, but this was the beginning, right? Now it's about taking whatever revelation or whatever has been given, revealed back to the self. And there's one more burden or another aspect and facet of that burden to be removed or revealed. The giver, six of orbs. So between the cards that are already pulled, there's only these two cards before we got the next whatever. The three plus the six of orbs is the nine of orbs that we started with, the eminence. It's also interesting that there are six orbs on the giver because In Ether Drift, one of the last cards, we saw the divine intervening up until the point where it would violate non-intervention. You could say act. We saw the divine acting up to the point where it would violate divine non-intervention. And the remaining like 3 hit points or whatever on the world tyrant, we had to take care of ourselves. We also saw the giver with the demiurge, but the additions were reversed. It was the giver in the Revelations edition and the demiurge in the Vitruvian edition that we saw with lightning when I used the mystical shaman oracle cards for like the person who got it or whatever. So it's interesting to see this giver again, but we see like this mystic rose on this scale. I'm using the moon card in the Revelations edition rather than the Vitruvian edition because in the Vitruvian edition, Anubis sits in judgment with the scales of Anubis rather than Ma'at or whoever. And so to see the scales here is interesting, but this like mystic rose catches my eye because we see something similar in the sky in the burden one. This burden being removed by the hands of the divine, if we so choose to let it go. Also, what catches my eye here is these two different triangles where we've already seen between the blind seer and the demon, like there's the circle, but one of the triangles was pointing up, the other triangle was pointing down. This is, take it as it resonates for stuff like this. First of all, I have different things that I've come across, and some of those things are audiobooks of literary RPGs. Some of those things are like anime, movies, other things on my own personal context. Previous the library of real Karukian mythos that is constantly apparently expanding, meaning like stuff that's come up in previous videos. But these are there are divine forces of light, divine forces of dark, and then everything earthly in between. On the scale of divinity, it's being endorsed by both the divine light and divine dark, which you could say is like the protective aspects of divinity and the more like active aspects of divinity, or the punishing aspects of divinity and the rewarding aspects of divinity, or whatever. Not surprised to see both of these here again because the shaman, the accomplished shaman, the adept shaman, has gone through the purity of both golden and black shamanism. Again, that in a more external focus, but now there is an internal shift. And look who we have after that, the Archangel of Glory, who is, as they've revealed themselves to me, who is the final Archangel. Actually, I went looking before and after the Archangel of Glory because, again, they were the last one. And I was kind of cheating. I realized that because it didn't come out naturally, but I was curious and it was only one left. And so I pulled, I don't even remember what I titled it. So, like, go back and watch myself. But it's interesting that it's coming out here now. Angel of Art and Grace. I feel like that grace is what's really important. Because we don't necessarily supersede the grace of the divine. If the divine itself gives grace and mercy, then who are we to pass judgment? Especially when we come into a position of power. the archangel has revealed itself where we have seen in the same deck its shield. But it reveals itself upon return, right? Which is sort of interesting. We saw the Vitruvian Archangel of Mysteries that initiated the whole thing. We saw the Vitruvian Archangel of Healing, which was, again, the spiritual sensory deprivation tank. We saw the Archangel Commander, who had us find and trained us in our power, our sword, whatever that means. And the Archangel of Glory, which is the fourth and final one, because there are only four suits, reveals itself after we've ventured into the Revelations edition. Once we return to the Vitruvian edition, once we return to the self, having gained all of these more externally validated or facing whatevers, then it reveals itself when we return to the self. Now unburdened and whole in the self and the sublime. The other side of that Archangel of Glory, or what's behind the Archangel of Glory, is the title card. So, and of course it is. I have both title cards here. I guess I don't even know where to put you. I'll put you here. After the title card is the grotesque, with the aspect of the divine showing itself. I have both versions. Okay, this is too much. Now I'm looking for the first. No, I'm looking for the Seeker, the Revelation Seeker. If you're curious, the Vitruvian Initiate is in between New World Order and the Stronghold of the Flame, Herald of the Awakening, and Crown of the Magi. If you're curious. But that's not what we're looking for, so we're going to keep it moving. Is this going to be at the top of the deck? The Revelations Keeper is in between the Champion and the Corruptor. I chose the Revelations Corruptor that holds the Mirror of Reflection and the Axe of Shiva that removes corruption. Also, we see that Merkaba. Both circles and triangles sort of like complete. And then the Champion Six of Wands there too. I included both moons. Of course. So I found the Seeker. We have the Archangel of Mysteries, Angel who illuminates the shadow. Did she not come out earlier? I feel like she did, but. And then the Seeker. And then the Stronghold of the Veil. Herald of the Darkening. I'm going to get her message. Before that was the Magus. Divinity and Man, Power of the Spirit. Powers of the Spirit. From the remaining cards, I'm going to get this message. Excuse me, of course, the Angel who eliminates shadows is here. I'll close my eyes because the title card is here and I can differentiate it from the other ones. All right, I'll give it 3 more. Oh, yeah, that's it. Saturn and Taurus, the gardener. Saturn is freshly. Excuse me. What's at the bottom of the deck? The Shining Dew. Saturn is freshly in Aries, not yet permanently, and then after its transit in Aries, it'll move to Taurus. Um, why the gardener though? This is interesting. I don't know if this was a seed planted or if it was some kind of hope for a future. Or if something, well, I guess it, yeah, because Saturn doesn't enter Taurus for Saturn spans how long in a sign? Like 2-ish years, maybe. I don't remember. Maybe like 2 to 3. Let's go to July. So cool. Okay. Where is Saturn? That's Saturn in Aries in 2026. Oh, this may be close enough. So, Saturn crossing the Taurus cusp. I don't know if it's, whoa, that's a long time from now. I don't know if this is the first time Saturn will enter Taurus. Saturn will cross into Taurus April 12th, 2028. So, like 3 years from now, which I think is about right because the Saturn return is like 28 to 30. The Archangel of Mysteries, angel who illuminates the shadow. 2, the spirit in search of science, like the spirit in search of experience was the initiate. To the keeper. Oh, and they're in the same suit. The Archangel of Mysteries sends its messenger to reveal something, a part of something that is to come, maybe. So that could be something that's like a reassurance that something is happening. But it's not necessarily happening quickly or immediately or in tarot timing. The suit of earth can be equated to years. So this could be something that's like been 7 years in the making that is finally going to be like breaching the surface. But it's revealed by the angel who illuminates the shadow. It's revealed by the Archangel of Mysteries, which is intriguing. It's also interesting. It's interesting and not lost on me that again we have something of the Vitruvian return to the self after the revelation. Revelations before, Vitruvian after. just like we had the burdened one and the Vitruvian after the destroyer of Revelations. And again, it's this return to the self, but it's like a whole self rather than whatever we had before the revelation. This could also be going back to the vision of what is to come. I'm looking at the gardener and I'm looking at the bread of life. Like, this is a seed that's planted. This is what it will grow to be. It's not necessarily full maturity, but it's not necessarily, it's like in its adolescence. It's not juvenile, but it's not fully mature either. But because this is between the bread of life, because this is referring back to the bread of life that flanked the holy water on the opposite side of the demiurge, this is like a way, and I guess it's fitting for now, like Saturn being in Aries now, because this feels like a change that we put into motion in our own life, or something that we are manifesting for the world. In a few years' time, it'll be more apparent than it is now. Interesting. What was I worried about? I feel like this didn't necessarily go as awry. As I thought. Excuse me. Cool. I think that's it. I don't think I necessarily have to make this unnecessarily longer. I almost went like live when I was walking earlier. But then again, it was that whole like, what is my revelation and how this resonates for me versus like what is to be shared publicly for the collective. Also, again, it was that whole like, but I guess my platform isn't necessarily, I mean, I don't know who watches these. I know the people like Holly who will like pop up in the live, so I know that they're here. But besides that, I don't know who watches these, which is another reason why I don't necessarily stress too much over the things that come out. Maybe it's a level of caution that's not necessarily needed on my behalf. Cool. Still, I wasn't expecting to see the Seven of Orbs. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna put these decks away. Then I guess I'll get final cards and move on with my day. What am I doing for the rest of the day? I don't know. I need a nap. I have been so totally engrossed in this audiobook. I stayed up way too late last night, just listening, transfixed. Today is a Gemini's birthday. I can never remember if his birthday is on the 30th or the 31st. Because I know his birthday is on like the last day of the month, but because there's like a few months that end on the 30th, my brain is always like, is it like the last day or is it the actual last day? And it's like the actual last day. I need to send him a message. I ain't talked to him in a while. Not really. I feel like I haven't talked to a lot of people in a while, though, honestly. Or at least not the way that I was before. But I've been traveling. Is it traveling if I traveled to one place and just stayed there for a while? Sure, why not? And there was so much in my own life sort of being sorted out. Cool. I feel like there's nothing more I need to say. That's all of the revelation and realization I recall having right now. Especially ones that aren't like super personal. The Journeyman and the Sacred Cinnabar. I was just like, oh yeah, Archangel of Healing, the spiritual girl. The card that came out is the Demon again, battling the Typhon. But the card at the bottom of the deck is the Archangel of Mysteries, angel who illuminates the shadow. Did this not come out within the past year? Maybe at the top of this year? Yeah. This did come out. I don't remember when or necessarily the context around it. But it was like devil energy being revealed and it not being who or what we'd necessarily think it would be. It could also be, I almost want to say a card of origins being revealed because the head of Medusa is here. But the Medusa was a monster made, not a monster born. But she ultimately suffered a fate that was not hers to control. She was punished for what was done to her and then later like killed for it. In a way. I mean, did she have to go turning people to stone? Also, I don't think she was necessarily roaming about from village to village turning people into stone. I think it was like people trying to make a name for themselves or people encroaching upon her territory that got turned into stone. Almost more in like a self defense, right? Like she was the trouble that people went looking for rather than her going out and causing trouble. And the truth here is almost like revealed. And in that mythological story, or within the mythos of that pantheon, why would a god goddess, because I don't remember whose temple it was, why would a god goddess punish Medusa for what happened rather than intervening to stop it in the first place if it was so much of an offense? It's interesting that the sharpshooter is here under the Archangel of Mysteries because in the Revelations edition we see the shield of Medusa. We see Medusa's head on a shield in the background of the card. I'll show you real quick before I get the final. Is this? Oh my gosh! There's reversals. I'll try to see if I can show you really quick. Well, I'll also make sure that these cards are upright. You see the head of Medusa on the shield at the top of the deck. Is this someone who overcomes their fate? Quote unquote. Only two cards are face down, are in reverse. There's the discerning one again with the angel. All right, final card from the. That was real quick. Bottom of the deck is Apocalypse because why would it be anything else? Last Judgment, a divine revelation. Oh, you're fine. Thanks, you too. We're almost done. The Emperor is the card that came out. The Emperor was at the bottom of the rest of the deck, of the combined deck. Like when I looked at the bottom, I saw the Emperor. No, it wasn't at the bottom. It's when I like split the deck. I had like put it together. Well, the Shining Dew was at the bottom of the deck. The Water and Waves, and then I split it because I was like, "What else is there?" And then I opened it to the Emperor, which is the hawk or a bird in the Vitruvian edition. Commander of Intellections is the Emperor. The Dynasty, oh my gosh, they're together again. The Dynasty and Apocalypse are together. The two completed Kabbalah trees of life, where we started with the Eminence before. What did we see? What did we literally just see? Brain was it the demon and what was at the bottom of the deck? The Archangel of Mysteries. I had the little white books. I didn't even use them. Oh well. This energy has come out before too. Energy of prophecy. The energy of an inevitable prophecy, but something that was also untold. Because of the Ark of the Covenant up there and the Emperor, there is an energy of something promised. And then Apocalypse is here. Judgment. Like there's a promised judgment, but this is also giving like a sarcophagus or funerary tomb thing. We actually saw some of them in the Vatican, at the Vatican. But with judgment, this is when the dead rise. Right? Typically. So something would be coming out of there. Is it the Emperor? He's the commander of intellections. It feels like there's something that he knows or he's prepared for in some way. On his beard, we see what we saw. Oh, look, there's a blind seer. I just opened the deck. Oh, there's a bird in the blind seer. And there's a bird on the Emperor. On his beard, you see that Merkabah looking thing? I mean, if it doesn't focus, I don't know how well you see it, but we've seen the look, literally right here. So the Apocalypse, the Dynasty, the Kindred, and the Bread of Life. It's like we've seen it here. But now it's used on his beard thing. You see. There it is, right there. And the hair is being fed through it. There's been an energy of prophecy that will come to be, and it will come to be, but it may not necessarily conclude the way that we would assume. There are certain things that are inevitable, and there are certain things that are destined to happen, and they will happen. But again, there's a difference between like a collective energy and a collective experience. There's a difference between what is destined to happen and how it will be resolved. That Emperor stands poised and ready to act swiftly when whatever is destined to happen happens, to potentially sway the outcome one way or the other. I don't know. Anyway, thanks, Holly, for stopping by. I hope you all have an amazing whatever whenever you see this. I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. I hope that whatever you need along your path journey and what you find. I hope you a healthy dose of discernment in discovering how this resonates for you, if it resonates at all, and how the pieces come together. Because it's coming back together. I don't know. I don't know. What do I know? I don't know. What do I know? I'm just some guy pulling cars.